Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Milton, and I am delivering the first of a series of sessions called Quick Tips. Quick Tips is for teachers, teacher trainers, all educators, basically in the English language teaching business, and it is designed to provide you with some very quick ideas, suggestions, recommendations, tips for use in your classroom you can implement directly. We are holding this series in the lead up to BBELT Best and Brightest of English Language Teaching 2023 to suggest some ideas to get everyone in the mood and ready for the conference, which will be coming in February, and just to get people communicating, about ideas for the classroom, and also to prepare us for the series. Okay, so thank you. I'll begin my talk. Could you please share the presentation? Thank you. So the session for today is developing autonomy to motivate shy learners. This will be a session relevant for teachers of young learners, for teenagers, and for adults. There'll be ideas for all age ranges. So the objectives for today, it's a very quick session, as I mentioned. It's only half an hour, approximately half an hour. We'll consider a little bit about how shyness affects students. We'll give some general advice, and then I'll give some very specific tips, because this is the topic of this series. And there's a little surprise for those of you who stay to the very end. I'll tell you about that surprise if you hang in with us for these next 25 minutes. I'd like you to think first about your classroom. Think about your students. Think about a particular student or one or two students in your classroom who rarely participates in classroom discussions. As we all know, in the English language classroom, speaking, whether it be with a teacher or specifically with classmates, is very important. Do you have a student who rarely participates in classroom discussions? Do you have a student who seems worried about how they will come across? What do I mean by this? Maybe they're a bit worried about what others will think of them, so they don't give their ideas, their opinions. They're a little bit worried about how people will judge them. Do you have a student who hesitates when trying something new? So, for example, when learning a new language point, when trying a new activity, when playing a new game, when speaking to a new person. If you have a student who you feel you can consider has some of these aspects, then you probably have a shy student. And if you have a shy student, you're one of the many teachers. I believe almost all classes will have at least one shy student, probably more. Now, how does shyness affect students? Well, because they are worried about how they may come across, how they may be perceived in their group, in their classroom, this can affect engagement in the activities, engagement in discussions, engagement in the tasks. As a result of lack of engagement, this can affect concentration. Shyness is a form of social anxiety. And when people or when students are concerned about how they may be perceived within their social group, they may be focusing more on that rather than on the topic of the class, rather than the learning. Shyness can also affect attainment because they are not engaging, because they're not able to concentrate. This can ultimately have an effect, an impact on their grades and what they are achieving. Progression, of course, if their grades have been affected, then of course also the progression, their learning has been affected. Not only at the end of the course, but within each class, in between each lesson. Shyness can also affect energy and enthusiasm. As all of us will know, all successful language learners will know, it takes a lot of energy to learn a language. You really need to try, you really need to experiment, you really need to put a lot of yourself into the process of learning to really be a successful learner. And this, of course, this can also affect enthusiasm for the classes. If they're not really engaging, if they're losing concentration, if they feel they're not progressing, this can have a big impact on motivation and enthusiasm. And shyness can also affect sociability and relationships. As we all know, learning a language is very difficult to do solely from a book, for example, or solely from one person. The more people you interact with, the more people you practice what you have learnt with, the more confident you'll be in using that language, producing it. So the development of relationships within the classroom is very important, as we all know. And shyness, this social anxiety, can have an impact on that. So before we go into some specific tips that you can directly implement into your classroom, here's some general advice that a teacher can take on board. Some of this may appear to be obvious, but it's very important to review and reflect on what our role is as teachers in the classroom. So let's consider being open and welcoming. Again, this may seem to be obvious, but it is so vital for a student and a teacher to have a good relationship, and for a student to have a positive relationship with their peers, for them to feel comfortable in the environment in which they're learning. So by encouraging an open and but by being open and welcoming, you are encouraging that behavior among the other students, and that will go a long way in supporting a student who is shy. So treating each student as an individual and with respect, making sure each student knows that you know their name, you know who they are, you know what they like, you know what they don't feel very comfortable with. And you're taking an interest in their learning. You're as a teacher, you're motivated to support them in their learning process. Be clear about why you ask for participation, what it means in the classroom. It's very difficult for a student with some form of social anxiety who is shy to participate in classroom discussions. Maybe they don't need to be the most vocal student in the group, but they do need to participate in some way. So what does that mean in your classroom? Once a student knows what that is, they can aspire to meeting that expectation. Be flexible by offering a diversity of methods and means for contributing. So don't only expect students to speak in open class when you clarify what participation means, it doesn't necessarily only need to be speaking in open class and classroom discussions. It can be speaking in pairs. It can be speaking in small groups. It can be speaking after some time once they feel more comfortable. It can be contributing once they've had some time to reflect and to prepare themselves. And there can be different ways of participating. It doesn't just have to be speaking, of course. And provide clear and honest feedback on individual contributions to the classroom learning throughout the term, not just at the end. Now, this may appear to be obvious, but in fact, it's actually quite difficult as a teacher to give very specific, personalized feedback to each individual student. It can be quite difficult because you may have a class of 16, 30, 40 students. It can be a tough task, but this is so vital in making a student feel valued, making them feel secure, making them feel safe in their classroom. And not just at the end. At each opportunity that you're able to provide some feedback, whether it just be praise on what they are doing. That you articulated that idea very well. Well done on using that grammar. Well done on providing your opinion on a complicated topic. By giving praise, by giving feedback when possible, correction. Be careful with correction with shy students, of course. You don't need to overcorrect, but some targeted, specific correction can be very motivating. And by doing this throughout the term, through every opportunity that you can, you're helping them build their confidence. So this is some general advice. Let's look at what the topic of this session is developing autonomy, developing motivation through autonomy, rather. So just a bit of clarification on what this means. So generally, you may have two types of mindsets within your group of learners. Not everybody is one or the other. You may have students which are somewhere in the middle, or somewhere more on one side, or somewhere more on the other side. But generally, we have in the classroom people with a bit of a fixed mindset and people with a growth mindset. What is a fixed mindset? Somebody who does not feel comfortable in their environment. Somebody with a fixed mindset may avoid challenges, may avoid experimenting with the language, may avoid trying new things. Someone with a fixed mindset may give up easily and quite likely be pessimistic about their learning experience. I quite frequently see this with, for example, teenagers who are low level. Most teenagers will have seen English in one form or another throughout primary school and secondary school. And if they are still at, say, A0, A1, A2 level, once they get to, the later teens, they're quite likely to have had some form of negative experience in their learning journey. So they may be pessimistic, and this may contribute to them being shy. Someone with a fixed mindset finds it difficult to take on feedback. They may ignore it, not necessarily intentionally, but they may find it difficult to digest what they're being told, what the constructive feedback they're being given. Someone with a fixed mindset may feel threatened by others. They may feel threatened by students who are less shy, who are more open, who are more extroverted, and who are more confident expressing their opinions. The objective here is to promote a transfer from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. What does a growth mindset mean? It's somebody who embraces challenges, somebody who persists in obstacles. So they're given a challenge, they're given something which is difficult, something which they find challenging, and they persist in their journey of overcoming that obstacle. Somebody with a growth mindset will see effort as necessary. As we all know, it's not easy to learn a language. Some people find it easier than others, of course, but for nobody, it's easy. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of time to learn. And somebody with a growth mindset will understand that, not only understand it, but will embrace it. Somebody with a growth mindset will really take on feedback and use that in their learning journey very quickly. And somebody with a growth mindset will not feel threatened by others. Rather, they will feel inspired by others. They will see what their peers are doing to progress in their language learning journey, and they will be inspired by that, and they will try to imitate, or they will try and take on suggestions, ideas that their peers they can give. What can teachers do to encourage this transfer from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? Well, here are some quick tips. praise learning, not intelligence or effort. So different students will have different strengths. Let's not focus too much on those strengths. Let's focus on the learning within the classroom, whether it be big or small. It is all worth of praise. Let's be careful with the language we use. Teachers can be careful by using yet more often with can't. So you can't use the present perfect yet, which makes a big difference, right? Because it means that soon you will be able to. A teacher can use different approaches, so providing differentiation within the classroom, not only with the tasks, but also in the way that a student can contribute and participate. Teachers can encourage collaborative learning. Often people feel confidence in numbers, right? They feel confident in groups. Sometimes speaking in open class can feel quite daunting. So allowing students to work together in groups and giving them autonomy as a group and encouraging them to learn as a group can support motivation. Now, testing, sometimes as teachers, we don't have a lot of control over the way that we test. But if we do, let's avoid testing students when they're not ready. It can be very demotivating to be tested on something that you still quite haven't managed to grasp. Just because a student hasn't grasped it yet doesn't mean that they haven't tried, that they're not working on it. It means that they just need a bit more time, and that's okay. Everybody learns at different paces, right? Providing sufficient and guided scaffolding. Now, this may be in terms of task setup, the way that we give instructions for tasks, the way that we prepare students for a task, but it can also be in the way that we teach language. And avoiding scores where possible. Quite often, the way that we mark things like speaking and writing in particular can be very, very subjective. One teacher may think it's one score and another teacher may think it's another score. So let's be, let's be sensible about this. Do we need to provide scores all the time? If it's a requirement of your institution, well then stick to the rubric as closely as possible, right? The criteria that you're provided. But if it's not that necessary, let's focus on the feedback rather than the actual scores. So here are some tips to implement into your classroom for promoting autonomy, of course. So student created marking criteria. If you have the space and the flexibility to do this in your class, give students some authority, authority is not the right word, but independence in the way that you're providing them feedback or you're providing them with a mark. Give students some independence. What do they want to get feedback on? So here are some ideas, presentation, handwriting, organization of ideas, interest and relevance of content. It can be quite demotivating if you give students a huge paragraph of lots of different feedback. Try focusing it to 2 or 3 points, and better yet, encourage the students to take some ownership over what they will be receiving feedback on. This can be quite difficult to set up. It requires some training, but it is a very fruitful endeavor once it is done successfully. Understanding progress. Once a student will understand how they are progressing and what they need to do to progress, and what their strengths and areas to work on are in their own learning journey, they will be more in charge of and more confident to take control over their own learning. So providing them with some a checklist of things they can consider to reflect on their own learning. Here are some ideas. So did they enjoy it? Did they need help? Did it take a long time? Do they feel that they learnt a lot? do they feel that they will use this later on? So getting students to reflect on their learning. Quite often we do this at the end of the class by asking some questions. But if we can encourage students to keep a journal of their reflections on their learning journey, we're providing them with the tools to 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 become autonomous learners after the classroom, right? Learning diaries. We've probably heard this all before, but it's such a fantastic tool. So, as I said, they can be reflection on their learning. It can be reflection on what their participation. It can be reflection on their personal objectives. Whatever it is, encouraging learners to reflect and review their learning as frequently as possible. So not only reflecting on learning, but reflecting on activities. So when you try something new in the classroom, which can be a bit scary for students, especially for shy students, ask them to reflect on the activity. Was it easy? Was it difficult? Why? Here's an example of a listening task. What did they find difficult? What did they find easy? By encouraging learners to reflect on an activity, you're providing them with some tools to understand maybe why they didn't enjoy it, or maybe why they did enjoy it. And once they have a better understanding of what they took from an activity or a task, they'll be able to use that information in subsequent activities. Setting personal goals. Now, often students have objectives they need to reach, linguistic objectives, right, which are set by the curriculum. But by encouraging learners to set their own personal goals, we're giving them some independence in their learning and some power over what they will be doing during their learning journey. This can be very motivating. Or for young learners, for shy students who are young learners, will often feel more comfortable with their peers, with a small group of peers, rather than open class in the big class. So by by setting up projects, you are encouraging collaborative learning. You're fostering relationships and encouraging sociability, and you're giving students space to participate in a less scary environment than an open class discussion. About what people are doing now, right? I don't know about you, but these days my WhatsApp is filled with voice notes. I send voice notes all the time. They're so much easier than typing. I now find typing quite laborious. Now, but this is great. What's great about WhatsApp group? What's great about sending voice notes? Well, you record yourself, and if you're not happy with it, you'll delete it, right? Or you won't send it. So you can record yourself as many times as you like until you're happy with what you've produced. And this is something they will be doing in real life in their own language, potentially. And also, it's giving the students the opportunity to take as many tries to what they want to produce as they need. So they can they can practice as many times as they like and send the message when they're ready. Using the green screen app. I love this app. What you do, you need a green piece of fabric, you put it behind the camera, and then you can set some backgrounds, and you can encourage speaking activities, and you can really go into the world of fantasy, right? Maybe for teens and adults, you can think about doing news reports or guided tours. For teens, you can think about interviewing celebrities. For kids, they can create some sort of drama. There's all sorts of things you can do with a green screen app. And what's great about it is it really encourages group work, encourages creativity, and it's a great activity for collaborative learning, and it's fun. For adults, making inquiries. This is more to develop speaking. Many students make inquiries about a course they would be interested in doing in the USA abroad. Um, an idea for students, for teens and for adults, for practicing phone skills is encouraging them to record the call and then bring that recording to class for feedback. Why is this great? Because it's a real world task. This is something they can actually see themselves doing. And well, if they're not happy with it, they don't have to share it with the class. They can do it again, right? But this is a great way of encouraging students to reflect on their own speaking, to consider their own progress, and to share with the group what they have achieved. It can be quite motivating. Perhaps your English, well, me, when I make inquiries, I get very motivated, even if I make a lot of mistakes, but I get quite motivated when I achieve the goal I set. So when I get the information that I've requested over the phone, when I'm able to order the thing that I wanted to do over the phone, when I'm able to achieve whatever I wanted to, because that demonstrates to me that I was successful in the task. And I'm not focused so much on the accuracy. It's more on the outcome of what I set out to do. A video diary. I love diaries. I think diaries are great for learning. I used a lot of diaries when I was learning Spanish. I don't do so much anymore. Maybe I should go back into it, but I think it's a great way of reflecting on progress. Talking about analyzing what you've been doing in class, analyzing your learning, and analyzing the activities you've been doing, and encouraging collaborative work. So this can be done in the form of a video rather than written down as well. You can encourage learners to respond to articles, right? So you can upload a news or magazine article to your learning management platform. This may be Google Classroom, whatever you're using. And this is something that, which we quite often do in real life, right? We'll reflect on an article. Let's encourage students to do this through video responses. Then students can listen to each other's video response and they can comment and give praise, right? The good thing about doing video responses is you give students the time to plan what they want to say, to think about what they want to say, and they don't have to do it straight away. They can practice a few times. They can not send the first version if they don't feel comfortable with it. They can send it once they feel happy with the result of what they've produced. So just as a summary of some of these tips, to combat shyness, to support students who are shy, sad, or anxiety in the classroom, let's encourage autonomy and let's motivate. So here are some quick tips. Scaffold autonomy training. You cannot become autonomous from one moment to another. It's very difficult to achieve autonomy. It's almost impossible to achieve 100% autonomy, right? I think. So it's our responsibility as teachers to provide the adequate training and adequate setup. So how can we encourage? How can we set up these activities? Think about the steps that learners need to take, and how can we support them to do this outside of the classroom. Developing planning skills, so thinking about objectives, how can students reach objectives. The better planners learners are, the better able they're going to be to achieve their objectives. Developing self-evaluation. We've talked about reflecting on progress. We've talked about reflecting on activities. So the more that students do this and then share their ideas. So thinking about reflection, the more students reflect by keeping a video journal or by keeping some sort of diary, the more they do this, the more confident they will be at identifying their areas of improvement and what they need to do to develop. Building a community of learning, so encouraging not only you giving praise as the teacher, but encouraging students to comment on peers' task and to praise them, encouraging them to learn from each other. This can really help with autonomy and with shyness, and building self-efficacy. So here were some tips. I hope you found them useful. And now on to the BBELT Surprise. As I'm sure you all know, BBELT, which is the best and brightest in English language teaching. This year, the theme for BBELT is moving forward and learning together. Quite apt after 2 years of 2.5 years of a pandemic. Now that we're all, I think, pretty much all back in the physical classroom, what does this now mean after 2.5 years, doing a lot of our activities online? So how can we now move forward from that and continue to learn, not only by returning to what we used to know before, but by not forgetting what we've learned while we've been adapting to a pandemic. So this is the topic. What is BBELT? BBELT is a conference led by the British Council here in Mexico. This year, there will be over 90 academic presentations. There'll be forums, there'll be talks, there'll be workshops. And for those of you who attend, this is an opportunity to showcase your brand, your school, your products, your services, to decision makers, to educators, to researchers, to anyone who you're targeting basically in the field. BBELT is a great place for teachers to connect. It's a great space for teachers to exchange ideas, to share what they've been doing in the classroom, to promote best. And it's a great opportunity not only for teachers to talk with each other, but also to network, right? To meet people from different schools, from different contexts. This year is online again, and we will have speakers and participants from principally from Mexico, but from all of Latin America and from Europe. So this is a great opportunity to understand what's happening in different contexts. Have you already registered for BBELT? If you haven't, this is the surprise. You can get a 60% discount by registering now with this code that I've shared on the screen. So PRM202311. Let me just show you what you need to do. So I've shared the link in the PowerPoint. This will also be shared in the chat. I'm just going to very quickly show you the website where you can register. I believe I'm sharing my screen now. So here is the link that I shared in the PowerPoint. Here is the website here is the page for BBELT 2023. The date, so it's Friday the 17th of February and Saturday the 18th. Here is some information about BBELT if you'd like to learn more. Some information on how to register and when it is, who attends, and the prices. So we have prices in Mexican pesos, and because we have people joining from all around the continent and even from Europe, we also have the prices in dollars. If you go to register now, so I'm just going to share my screen again, excuse me, because I've opened a new tab. You can move here and you have information. You can either register as an individual or register as a group. Once you click on here, you need to give your email, and after you give your email, there will be information on how to claim the discounts, and then also how to register. Okay. And can I go back to the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. Yes. So there is some information on how to register for BBELT, and here is the code to get a 60% discount. Finally, just before I leave you, we will be holding similar calls every Wednesday, excuse me, at this time, 6 p.m. Mexico time. I will be delivering a session on some quick tips for your classroom. Today was on motivating shy students. Next week we'll be setting an agenda for the following weeks. Please join me if you found this useful, and please share with your peers, with your fellow teachers, and for anybody else you might think that this will be valid and useful for. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope this was useful, and have an excellent afternoon, have an excellent evening, and see you next week, hopefully. Thank you very much.